what would you say would be like
one is that ministry demands a tremendous level of sacrifice. There is a tremendous level of sacrifice that comes with ministry. Sacrifices that your family has to make, and sacrifices that you have to personally make. A lot of times guys go into ministry with the picture of ministry being this grandiose endeavor.
looking at the lights, the suits, the
cars,
people,
the anniversaries, and all that good stuff. Not realizing that there is a tremendous amount that you have to give up in ministry. Ministry is not all cars and suits and ties and rings and big cufflinks.
Yeah.
It costs to be a minister. It's a high calling, but there's a high cost associated with it. The other thing that I would say young guys need to make sure they're careful to do is to prioritize. You know, if you're not careful, especially if you have a family, life can become so much about the ministry that you lose perspective of your first ministry, and that is your family. Hate to say it, many of the iconic preachers that I admired from afar in the generations gone by, while their ministries thrived, oftentimes the ministry thrived at the cost of
the family.
You know, children that grew up didn't know their daddy.
Yeah.
You know, essentially wives growing up or going along without a husband. And so you have to be careful to make sure that you have that balance, you know, and so that your family and your wife is not sacrificed for the cost of ministry. God asks us to put Him first,
right,
but He never asks us to put our family before our ministry. And that's even, you know, something that I've had to struggle with and battle and grapple with over my few years in ministry. And so I would tell guys that going in, make sure that you keep a healthy balance and a healthy perspective, and don't sacrifice the things that are important, or the things that are essential, I should say, for things that maybe are not as important. Being able to say no.
and I think when you don't hear it, the worst thing for you to do is experience it.
Yeah.
You almost want somebody to tell you that before you get into ministry, because most people want to get into ministry because the sermon touched them.
Right.
So because the sermon touched me, I want to do that.
Right.
But you don't know what it's like to be up there. The lights are hot.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I would say the two things as far as that young ministers would need to know is perception. Mm-hmm. No ministry is as great as it looks.
Exactly.
And no ministry is as bad as it looks at the same time.
Yeah.
So you look at another ministry and you say, man, they're doing everything right. They always are successful. Yeah. They're always, everything they touch is gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so even though it may be good, but no ministry is as great as it looks. There are some costs, there's some pain,
right,
there's some sorrow that comes along with it. It's almost like with people with Facebook pages. Yeah. Nobody is pretty every day. Like every picture like is on point.
And they're filters.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes churches give a perception that every worship service and everything that they do is great. Right. And so I know, especially in this age of social media, you'll look at another ministry and you'll compare that ministry to yours. Yeah. And you will say, man, I'm not doing enough. And you end up getting frustrated with where God has you and with your people, right, that God has, right, led you to minister to, right, not realizing you actually have more peace.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And it's actually happier where you are,
absolutely,
than at the place or the ministry that you're looking at. So, you know.
And I would add to that even that not everyone is called to minister the same way.
Right. Right.
You know, not everyone's personality and skill set and level of giftedness translates into every ministry setting.
Right.
And so you have to be aware of that and realize that maybe the ministry that God calls you to is not supposed to look like someone else's ministry.
Or the ministry that you're called to is not the one you admire.
Right.
You admire that ministry so much, but you're not called to do that. And if you try to do that, you will suffer.
Right.
So if you get into your calling, you get into your purpose.
That's good.
I would say my second one is how much, I would tell them, a young minister, how much are you willing to pay? How much are you willing to?
Right.
It's,
Right.
you know, almost kind of piggyback on what you know.
Yeah.
This is going to cost you.
Yeah.
And so there are some ministers that will hold the ministry back because they want to pour more into the family.
Right.
There are some who say, in order for the ministry to go to this level, it's going to cost something.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to spend time with your children.
Right.
Your marriage won't be the best marriage in the church because this is going to cost you something. You're going to have to study.
Yeah.
You're going to have to really put the work in and study.
Right.
So when other couples are out, you know, on date night, you're studying on Friday night because you are preparing for whatever. Are you sure you want to
pay that cost?
You sure you want to pay that cost? You know, and so I think it's frustrating when people are critical of a ministry when they don't know the cost.
Right.
Just to even get here, and not that we even satisfied.
Yeah, you're right.
But it costs so much just to even be at this point. So
I'm gonna piggyback on that too, and you said something, you know, with respect to the relationship, particularly with your wife. You know, if you know that you're called to ministry in a particular type or level of ministry, it's worth having that conversation with your spouse, your potential wife or partner. To understand,
hopefully it's potential before you're already in it.
Correct. To understand that, okay, you are marrying into a lifestyle that is expensive.
And it's a lifestyle. Ministry is a lifestyle unlike any other. This isn't politics, but it got politics in it.
Right.
This is something that is so demanding and unique that the people that surround us have to understand. You know, the pressure doesn't lighten up. As ministry grows, the weight grows.
Absolute magnitude.
And you gotta grow, and the family has to grow with the weight.
Yeah.
Or you'll get crushed under it.
Yeah.
So very good. Amongst ministers, amongst evangelists, just, you know, our effectiveness. What would you say is the state of ministry? Like, are we really making are we just getting lost?
I think I'll answer it this way. I think ministry at large is in transition. The way we do church, the way we do ministry is in transition, and that transition is being forced by generational transition. Guys now are trying to figure out how to but how to connect with the generation that they really know very little about.
Right.
I mean, you and I, as young as we are, there's a generation that we're trying to bring in that it's a struggle to connect with.
Even at this,
Exactly, even at our age level, and with the age gap not being that great. And so I think that's what a lot of guys are trying to figure out now, is what's next? How do we navigate this transition so
and
that
move
we don't
the church to that,
or lose a generation in the process? You know, I've read some statistics that tell us that the generation, our generation, the one behind us, the ones coming up behind us, are probably at the highest risk historically of really falling away, of being disconnected from organized, structured religion. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we connect with this group, this generation, before we lose them?
Right.
Because that threat is a very real thing.
I think too, with social media, I know for our generation, the generation before us didn't grow up with YouTube.
Right.
Our generation, we had the opportunity to really sit down. Churches we would never visit.
Right. Yeah.
Conferences we would never go to.
Yeah.
Things that were never of our faith.
Right.
We had the opportunity to look at religion through YouTube,
Right.
through Facebook, through social media.
Clips.
And I think, and I think it affected what we needed to do more. You know, it challenged us to be able to say, wait a minute, they're doing what in South America? they're moving into to Germany and they're having this in Washington,
Right.
and we were able to see certain things, but at the same time, so has the rest of the world.
Right.
So a lot of people that are coming to our congregations, they may have spent all weekend long looking at 20 different religions
Right.
and 20 different messages.
Right.
Before there was a time where you only heard your preacher.
Right.
Now our congregations are filled with people who hear 15, 20, 30 different other preachers.
Not just preachers and messages, but edited.
Yeah,
messages.
clips, yeah.
Where you
And snapshots of their congregations. So they get all of these images, and then they come to our congregation, and we almost have to deprogram.
Yeah.
And then there's some people who are angry with church because they saw a clip on YouTube.
Right.
And they say, well, the church is not, and you got to work through all that. So I just think that's a unique, challenge within the church, and just moving forward. Ministry is not for the lighthearted, and it's a job that just it never ends. So.